Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings. Welcome to a short bite today. Today I'm in the town of Stroud, in fact my local town here in the county of Gloucestershire. Now the other day I was doing a walkabout around Stroud and I came across a sign of a road which really threw me because I wasn't expecting this person's name to be in that location, because the name of the person I associate with something completely different here to do with the town of Stroud, which we'll talk about later. But this part of the town is the top of the high street. That down there is the Swan Lane. In fact, along there was a Swan Lane Inn, which has connections to the history of the Stroud Water Canal. At the top of the town here was an important part of Stroud's history. This here was once the Cross, and that road over there used to be called Tower Hill and not Parliament Street as it is today. But it's in that general direction we'll be going to. Now over here, which is behind this shop now called the Door Shop, I remember actually this when it was Lewis, an electrical shop back in the 70s and early 1980s. I also remember the police station being built in the 1970s as well. But behind there, behind where Rooksmore Press is today, something very interesting, very special. Now, because of editing, I'll be bringing you back here later in the video. I'll be filming it in a moment, but I'll take you around there to show you the location of something which has a particular link with our story. A little bit more about this location here to do with the cross. In fact, the cross itself was hit by an army truck, by the British Army in 1940. Part of it is now in the museum. I think it's one of the dolphins that was on the cross there. That's now in the museum in the park here in the town of Stroud. And the connection here is that this is the top of the high street. Going that way, you've got a couple of roads branching off. Now the road that we'll be following is this one here, which is present day Parliament Street, and we'll be heading that general direction, but we'll be getting to it on a circuitous route. This road over here though is a new road, well newish. It's called Cornhill. It wasn't always here. There was a big opposition to a massive bypass. Think Spaghetti Junction with all those flyovers there. That's what they were going to plan to do here in the town of Stroud in the 60s and 70s. But only this new road, which I think was built either mid-70s or early 1980s, was completed. To the right of that, you got Stroud's famous farmers market, which I've never actually been to. So let's go on down this way, following the line of what we're going to see through Lansdown to the first proper location of today's short bite here on West Country Wanderings. Come down the high street a little way. The church, St Lawrence Church, what I showed a little bit of, is back there, and I'm in a road now called Lansdown. Not entirely sure I know how that got its name. Number of interesting buildings here, one coming up on the right hand side, which is Lansdown Hall and Gallery. Lots of art events take place there. They often have cinema screenings, that sort of thing, and there's a little parker there. Occasionally they have outdoor music there, so that's Lansdown Hall and Gallery. And a little bit further along you have what was the original location of Stroud's Museum, which has now been relocated to the museum in the park at Stratford Park, about half a mile the other side of the town. But what we're walking to is towards, well, initially we'll be walking to something called Fountain Inn, and that's a little bit of a clue as to what we're going to be looking at today here on this short bite on West Country Wanderings. So yeah, this used to be the library, which has recently been moved into the Five Valleys shopping centre, part of the old Woolworths building actually, somewhere I used to work. I didn't used to work in that one, but used to work for Woolworths as a store manager in many locations in Cornwall. But yes, this is now, what was the Stroud Museum is now the Centre for Science and Art. I did show it in a previous video looking at photography around the town of Stroud, so I'll link to that there. Just noticed on the outside here they're running pottery classes and open studios, but it's an amazing Victorian Gothic building here in Lansdown. Now the rest of this section of it is actually kind of terraced housing, but quite tall, 3-storey terraced housing. But yeah, there it is, the School of Science and Art, an amazing building that. So we're now looking at where Lansdown meets Brick Row, but we're going in the other direction. Now this here is Mill House, bit of a clue to what we're going to be looking at. Now this is our continuation of Lansdown along here. Before we do that though, we're going to make a little diversion down this footpath here. Now this here, I hope you can hear me above the rush of water. Despite it being pretty dry, that's got quite some flow on it. And the mill that I showed you was just there. And this in fact is the Slad Brook. Yes, as in the village of Slad and Woolpackers Inn and Loreley, all of that kind of thing, which is just 2 miles away from her. That's not part of our story, but the water and where it comes from very much is. Let's continue along Lansdown. So this is the famous Fountain Inn here at Uplands, but we need to return to Lansdown, which is just down through that way to the rear of what there would have been mills in this area, and then we're going to be turning left and all will start to become clear. Now this is where our story really starts. Yes, Little Mill Court, that's not part of it, another mill of course, but it's this one on the right. Ben Grazebrook Well. Now that plaque or name of this road, which is called Ben Grazebrook Well, really captured my imagination because Ben is short for Benjamin, and I'm thinking, I know the name Benjamin Grazebrook. I'm sure that's got something to do with the Stroud Water Canal, the Cotswold canals, of which we've been covering a lot on the channel. Why is his name here in Uplands, Lansdown, and not near the canal? Well, there lies in our towel, and the last word of that is well. So to find out exactly why, we need to go up in this direction. Now, at the end of Ben Grazebrook Well Road, which is a newish road, perhaps 1990s, 2000s, we need to go this way through here. And already I can hear the sound of trickling water. Who was Ben Grazebrook? Currently looking at Uplands Church. And down here is Gaines's Well. So why, if this is Gaines's Well, does it refer to one Ben Grazebrook? Well, we need to rewind to find out who Mr. Ben Grazebrook was at one time. Now, unfortunately, down there it's a little bit inaccessible. I can make out some very odd things indeed, including a lamp. There's also a building, but it's buried under a load of ivy, and I don't seem to be able to get access to it, lost in the mists of time. But all this area is due to well, not the natural spring, which is an offshoot of the Slad Brook, but the building that was here and all the associated work with it, and also the reservoir that was built behind the present day police station here in Stroud. Now here high above the town of Stroud, you've got this amazing piece of open land. I'm not entirely sure if it's got an official name or not. I don't even know who owns it. It's certainly public access, the people walk across it, but not that many. It seems to be a bit of a little hidden gem. Our well and spring gate is just down there. But who was Benjamin Grazebrook? Well, I can tell you, he was born to another Benjamin Grazebrook here in the town of Stroud in 1731. He married a lady called Anne. They had 5 children, one of which died in early infancy. One of those children was also called Grazebrook. And yes, he did have associations, many associations, with the Stroud Water Canal. In fact, he became their accountant, managing all the books and all the money that flowed through the canal, in terms of, well, not literally flowing on the canal, on the water, but in terms of the books, the investors, people investing in it, like the mill owners and that sort of people from like Bewdley, Gloucester, Worcester, Bristol, all the merchants in the area, they gave the money to him for the canal to be built. It's a really important man. Later on, he actually set up the Stroud Bank with a couple of other businessmen in this part of Gloucestershire. It's a really important man. But why did he have something to do with this well? Well, there we go. By trade, he was actually a plumber. So on the share documents on the Stroud Water, in fact, Stroud Water Canal's got very extensive records. A canal with probably the most extensive records of any canal anywhere. So we do know he put himself name as a plumber. Now, plumber, in terms of what that means, is in those days you have to look at the origins of the word plumber. It comes from the Latin plumbum, which means lead. So basically he worked with lead. So not just like somebody today might be doing central heating or heat storage pumps or replacing a washer and a tap, that sort of thing. He did full-on heavy-duty lead work. And it was from the lead work he thought he had an idea. The town there in Stroud was struggling with quality water. Poor quality water meant poor quality sanitation, spread of diseases like diphtheria. So he wanted to improve the water quality in his local town. And he thought there was a great water source here coming down the Stroud Valley and then going there. Guinness, why not tap water off that by putting in some lead piping, building a reservoir at the top of the high street, we showed you the location of that in a moment, and have that as the water supply for the town of Stroud. And that's exactly what he did. Now, I'm not sure if it was put in later, but there was another underground reservoir hereabouts. I'm not sure if I can get access to it. If I can, I'll insert that footage a little bit later in this short bite video. But he had that bit, which is an amazing achievement, really improving the sanitation of the town of Stroud. In fact, earlier than a lot of other towns got their sanitation. Later on, there was the health boards, wasn't there? And it later became part of the Stroud Water Company, Stroud Water Board. And they continued to use this, then putting in a pumping station to pour more water to increase the flow in dry periods out of the Stroud Brook and the spring here, Guinness Spring, and down into the town of Stroud. And that, of course, later became part of what is now the Severn and Trent Water Company. Private company these days. I won't go into the politics of that here. But yeah, amazing guy, Benjamin Grazebrook. He also went on into another country with his son to do a similar project there, and that was in the town of Brecon. I can't remember what county that lies in the country of Wales, but I kind of know where Brecon is, Brecon Beacons, all that kind of thing. So yeah, so he went on there with his son to do a similar project there to improve water supply, and then of course he did monumental work to help to establish the Stroud Water Canal, which of course is being connected and which of course we look at again from time to time here on West Country Wanderings. So yeah, one Benjamin Grazebrook, and his well, which has, as I say, it has that original name and his well, which I don't know the origins of, and then of course they renamed the road because of the associations. The famous Stroud man Benjamin Grazebrook. Incidentally, I was in Cricklade the other day and I did notice that the bank in Stroud actually got robbed, and there's a plaque there in Cricklade. The gentleman that did it got hung. He was actually taken to the city of Salisbury in Wiltshire to be executed. He was from Cricklade there, northern part of Wiltshire. Yeah, but that was an aside. But yeah, amazing to think that they had that there. So now you've seen the well of our gentleman friend from the history of the Stroud Water Canal, one Benjamin Grazebrook, after putting in plumbum lead pipes in from Gaines's Well to this location here, which is adjacent to the present day police station here. Of course, that wasn't there when he constructed this. Now, what this was here, which is now effectively a car park for Lynn Niblett's bookkeeping services, was a reservoir. Now, I can't work out from the OS maps dated from 1885 whether it was an underground reservoir, it was just simply a covered reservoir, or even if indeed it was just an open reservoir. I don't have that information, but it would have been in this area here. Just amazing really to think that. And then of course, because this is a high point above the town, remember I started the video at the top of the high street, so that's adjacent to where I am at the moment. That's St Lawrence Church there, the parish church here, the town of Stroud, but there are many other churches dotted around this town. Fairly large town here in the Cotswolds, of course, because of the wool-keeping trade and that sort of thing. This here would have been the area of the reservoir, and it was fundamentally important to the well-being of the town. Obviously an important water source coming off the Stroud Brook there, from the springs there that we saw there, just below Uplands there, just below Uplands Church. And yeah, so this whole area would have been a reservoir, and of course that would have been important for providing quality of water supply for the people of Stroud. And of course later on, with the health boards taking over to the Stroud Water Company, and now what is the present day Severn Trent Water Company. Well, I've just walked up Old Bisley Road to this, and you're looking at a reservoir. Because the population of Stroud grew throughout the 19th century, it needed more water, so the then new Stroud Water Company built this reservoir higher up the valley with a much bigger capacity than the one and the water that Gaines's Well, now called Ben Grazebrook's well, of course, could provide. So this one was built here just off the old Slad Road, and it's called Stroud, should I say, Stroud Covered. Now here from Uplands and Parliament Street in this unnamed patch of wonderful green landscape here in the town of Stroud in Gloucestershire in the Cotswolds, that's it for today here on this short bite on West Country Wanderings. There'll be another short bite maybe towards the end of this month or going into July. Any comments on this, please drop a comment below. Always great to hear from you. If you think somebody else may be interested in viewing this video, then please share it with your friends, family, other groups that you might think will be interested in water supplies, that sort of thing, and local history. Until next time on West Country Wanderings, take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, and I hope to see you on the channel again very, very soon. All the best for now. Bye bye.